Why it is important to understand that you are immortal. A talk by Anthony Whitehouse. It is so rare in current Christian thought these days to find a celebration of the immortality of man, and yet it is the platform on which Jesus' ministry was founded and healing occurred. He demonstrated, taught, and proved that man is immortal. And yet the current thinking among most Christians is that we will get, at some point, to understand our immortality, but only after we have passed through the death process. Immortality, however, is already a present reality. We don't have to prove it. It is the truth of being. Being can never become not being or death. Death is only the absence of being, and being, God, can never be absent, however much personal sense would have it otherwise. Obviously, we cannot be mortal now if at some point in the future we find ourselves to be immortal. Being immortal at any point obviously means that we can never be mortal. Mary Baker Eddy, the discoverer of Christian Science, indicates in her textbook that the divine principle of man speaks through immortal sense. It therefore follows that for us to be able to hear God, it is imperative that we do not deny our immortality, but cultivate it assiduously. She also adds that you can never demonstrate spirituality until you declare yourself to be immortal and understand that you are so. One of the passages of the Bible from Proverbs 8, which I love, gives us such a good sense of our immortal natures. It sings to us of our eternal audience with God, enjoying the continual grace of His presence. Let's listen to it now. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of His way, before His works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning or ever the earth was. When there were no depths I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth, while as yet He had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When He prepared the heavens I was there, when He set a compass upon the face of the depth, when He established the clouds above, when He strengthened the fountains of the deep, when He gave to the sea His decree, that the waters should not pass His commandment, when He appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by Him, as one brought up with Him, and I was daily His delight, rejoicing always before Him, rejoicing in the habitable part of His earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. It is absolutely critical we understand our immortal nature, because if we don't accept this essential facet of our being, we deny God, our Father and Creator. If we deny God by accepting that man, made in His image, is finite, then God will deny us. How can that which is infinite be conscious of or acknowledge that which insists it is finite? Only personal sense or the human mind has a problem with immortality. It cannot really deal with it. And yet it is the refusal to accept immortality as a reality that constitutes personal sense or the human mind. It is one of the things that defines personal sense. Divine sense knows it is immortal. Can we really make the quantum leap of giving up this belief of being finite once and for all? This is what Christian Science is asking us to do. Irrespective of what our beliefs are on the subject, we are immortal, whether we like it or not. When we accept this reality, This acceptance will start to operate within consciousness to heal us of all our ills. Look at it this way. If we are immortal, then there is not one disease on earth that can kill us. So, if disease cannot kill us, what purpose does it serve? Obviously none at all, besides keeping us mesmerized. If it cannot kill us, then we see that it is only a suggestion. All there is to disease is the fear of it. Perhaps I can repeat that last sentence. All there is to disease is the fear of it. If at any point in your lives you are sitting in bed late at night becoming anxious about a broadcast epidemic of some contagious disease, consider this phrase. The fear will leave you, and what is more important, the epidemic will abate in the world. This truth will rid the world of any epidemic. One of the things I always do in my supportive work to reinforce my sense of the immortal nature of man and find that Christ-like sense in everyone is to take Psalm 139 and apply it to the case in hand. Let me read the first few verses of the psalm in question. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down-sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. The great thing about this psalm is that it really conveys the extraordinary sense of an ever-present God and his eternal relationship with his beloved child. If you take the psalm and substitute the name of a person, it allows you to see that person's relationship to God. Let me read it to you after putting in the name of someone called Peter. O Lord, thou hast searched Peter and known him. Thou knowest his down-sitting and his uprising. Thou understandest his thought afar off. Thou compassest his path and his lying down, and art acquainted with all his ways. For there is not a word in his tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset him behind and before, and laid thy hand upon him. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. Whither shall he go from thy spirit? Or whither shall he flee from thy presence? If he ascends up into heaven, thou art there. If he makes his bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If he takes the wings of the morning, and dwells in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead him, and thy right hand shall hold him. If he says, Surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about him. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. For thou hast possessed his reins, thou hast covered him in his mother's womb. Peter will praise thee, for he is fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works, and that his soul knoweth right well. His substance was not hid from thee when he was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see his substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all his members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. How precious also are thy thoughts unto him, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, they are more in number than the sand. When Peter awakes, he is still with thee. One Sunday evening, I discovered a friend's daughter had been involved in a serious car accident, so serious that the doctors determined she would be hospitalized for some 3 to 6 months. I took the psalm we have just read and sent it to him with his daughter's name inserted. I received a letter from him shortly afterwards expressing his gratitude because his daughter had been released from hospital the following Friday. Naturally, I was deeply grateful as well, but I realized that through this exercise we had glimpsed something of that child's loving relationship with her Father, Mother God. The truth of this relationship had healed the situation. It is probably true to say that one of the reasons we don't understand or experience our immortal natures is because of the human belief that we are temporarily caught up in being human. It is a very tenacious and mesmerizing belief. Here we are, temporarily involved in the human predicament, temporarily experiencing personal sense, or the sense of being human personalities, trying to work our way out of the dilemma, and yet any temporary state of affairs is a divine impossibility. It is an illusion of personal sense and no more. We are not temporarily human, pending the arrival of the transforming Christ to bring us into all understanding. There is no necessity for this temporary condition. Scholastic theology would have us believe we need both to do penance for the error of Adam and redeem ourselves from sin in some manner in order to reach heaven. For some reason, human belief considers it is necessary for us to suffer from the temporary human condition. But this is only a belief. It is not the divine reality. Since it is temporary and will not stand, we really don't have to pay too much attention to it. Error loves to grab our attention and hates being ignored. As long as we are paying attention to it, we are mesmerized. So let us set aside this seeming necessity for a temporary state of human existence. Another reason it is critical for us to understand our immortal natures, or the truth that we are immortal, is that any other standpoint involves suffering. The divine mind, God, necessarily destroys any concept unlike itself. It will not tolerate error of any sort, any more than the science of mathematics will allow 2 + 2 to equal 5. Humanity believes it can continue on its merry way and totally disregard divine reality. The only outcome of this indifference to the divine has to be suffering, not because God wishes us to suffer, but because breaking law always carries with it penalties, even at the level of mortal existence. We might as well take these lessons on board now, because we cannot avoid them. As Mrs. Eddy puts it in her work No and Yes, surely the probation of mortals must go on after the change called death, that they may learn the definition of immortal being, or else their present mistakes would extinguish human existence. How long this false sense remains after the transition called death, no mortal knoweth. But this is sure, that the mists of error sooner or later will melt in the fervent heat of suffering, mortality will burst the barriers of sense, and man be found perfect and eternal. If we are reluctant to take the step of insisting on our immortality, it is probably because we have not seen the awful cost of hanging on to the mortal view. It is the sense of being mortal which is evil itself. If we insist on being mortal, then we will experience all the facets this evil standpoint comprises, from penury through murder and starvation. And yet what blessings follow taking the divine or immortal sense of existence on board? We are blessed beyond measure when we recognize ourselves in God's image and likeness, because that image carries with it the promised dominion we find in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Mrs. Eddy describes the blessing we find in this description as follows. Self-renunciation of all that constitutes a so-called material man, and the acknowledgement and achievement of his spiritual identity as the child of God, is science that opens the very floodgates of heaven, whence good flows into every avenue of being, cleansing mortals of all uncleanness, destroying all suffering, and demonstrating the true image and likeness. There is no other way under heaven whereby we can be saved, and man be clothed with might, majesty, and immortality. We entertain angels when we admit our immortal natures. We are shown in our textbook that angels are the inspiration of goodness, purity, and immortality. But again, the prerequisite to our audience with spirit is that we both give up classifying ourselves as mortal, fallible, and sensual, and the acting out of these qualities. Scholastic theology has proffered the fallacy that we have a choice over the issue of being immortal. When we realize that the word choice has the same root as the word chaos, then we understand that such a premise is a total non-starter. We cannot have a choice over the matter without bringing ourselves into chaos. We embark upon this endeavor not because of any volition of our own, but because of a divine imperative to heal the sick and the world of all its problems. If we love mankind as Jesus did, we seek to rise to the understanding of our immortal natures, not for that understanding alone, but because such understanding takes away the great scourge which bedevils mankind, that is, the belief in and the fear of death, a belief which blights existence even mortally conceived. We deserve more than this. We both deserve and merit to find ourselves upright, pure, and free. It is time for the slavery of the belief in mortality to end. This talk has been downloaded from the website www.supportinprayer.com, the website maintained by Anthony Whitehouse, a Christian Science practitioner.